Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jordan here with another Warhammer Total War online commentary. In this particular ladder battle, I will be piloting the Greenskins, led by a bunch of lads, and I believe I have an Orc War Boss as well as an Orc Shaman back there, so it's definitely going to be a fun matchup. My opponent over here is going to be playing the Empire, and just before we get started, I wanted to comment, this has quickly become one of my favorite maps. I really like the battle that's encouraged by this gulch here. It definitely makes for a fun engagement, and also the high ground here is very cool with the use of Night Goblins. You can sneak them up there, and the opponent won't have any idea if they're up there, and then they can start raining fire down on the valley below. So definitely a lot of fun interactive mechanics on this map. Regardless, let's go over the army composition real quick. So I have a front line of goblins against the Empire. These are undoubtedly, in my opinion, one of the best fodder units. They come in very high density with 120 units, and again, they are shielded. So against crossbowmen, handgunners, any of those type of units, they can usually absorb a lot of fire and are very cost effective for the 300 resources they cost. In my secondary line, I have the Black Orcs. So once the goblins absorb the initial shock, these Black Orcs will follow up with their 110 armor, their 42 weapon damage with armor piercing capabilities, and really generate value. You don't want to send in the Black Orcs first, because if they take a really hard, volley of crossbow fire or handgunner fire, that's really, you're going to be losing a lot more value than you would if these guys take that fire. And something to consider also is, I've noticed on ladder a lot, when you engage, most people just kind of leave their missile troops on auto fire, and they'll just kind of keep firing at your goblins for most of the battle. So it definitely pays off. A lot of opponents are lazy with missiles to keep those goblins in the front. So that's just my 2 cents there. As far as my siege units goes, I have the Doom Diver catapults, who are quite good. They're extremely accurate in my opinion, and usually do very well for themselves. Compared to Empire artillery, they only have 400 range, which is fine. The Empire Great Cannon has 450, and most of the Dwarvish artillery also has in the low 400s as well. So they do have short range, but again, I think the accuracy definitely is very worth it. And regardless, as the Greenskins, you're usually going to be advancing on your opponent anyway, so might as well just scoot them up, and they'll usually get there and do their job. So I also have an Arachnarok Spider. I'm a huge fan of this unit. Not only does it poison your opponents with both its melee attacks and missile damage, it has extremely high weapon strength, very good armor at 150, so it's very resilient, and all around causes terror. And again, once the goblins absorb that initial shock and you bring in the Arachnarok Spider to support your Black Orcs, it is just such a potent strategy. Right here, I have a Goblin Big Boss. I've really become a fan of this guy. He has 94 movement speed, so he is much faster than most cavalry. Has very good combat stats. Again, it is a heroic unit, despite it being a goblin, and he can carry potions. So he is a very good addition, in my opinion, and very cheap. And then I also have an Orc Shaman back here, and then an Orc War Boss hiding in the trees over there with his potions. So definitely going to be using the Big Wah. I feel like it is very good with goblins and Black Orcs, and can really make a difference in that front line. Not to mention that, but they also, the Big Wah has a very good magic missile attack at its disposal. So in terms of my Vanguard deployment, I have 2 Night Goblin Archers who, like I was discussing with you guys earlier, will be making their way to the high ground to rain some fire. Unfortunately, my opponent has a pretty good opening line of sight on that hill, so we will see how that pans out. I have 1 Goblin Wolf Rider in the trees back here, and then I have another one over here. So a lot of gobbo action going on, and we'll see how it plays out for me. As far as my opponent's army goes, he has 2 Reiksguard here. Reiksguard are pretty elite cavalry, 120 armor, which is very high. Good leadership and good combat stats across this board with a charge bonus of 62, which is quite a bit higher than the Empire Knights. But regardless, I like to go with the Empire Knights personally. It allows me to squeeze in an extra group of great swords or things like that. But Reiksguard are very good. So he has a Light Wizard with the Lore of Light. And then he has a miscellaneous front line of swordsmen over here with crossbowmen mixed in. And then over here he has greatswords. So personally, I like to split up the greatswords back here. And then once the battle starts, you can overload a flank. Because right now this is a bit of a telegraph. I kind of know where most of his power is going to be. So I can just send the Ragnarok Spider and get it in position beforehand. In terms of his leadership, he has Boris Todbringer and I think the Light Wizard. And that was it. So should be an interesting battle. And without further ado, let's get started. So unfortunately for me, I did have my goblins making their way up here, and this Light Wizard decided to take the short route and just discovered them instantly. So these goblins will begin to take some shots at him and kind of try and chase him off, and they do a little bit of HP damage, but nothing substantial. So I immediately identify this, and you can see I send the Goblin Big Boss up here with his slippery effect, knowing that these cavalry will be here very quickly. And then I also send the Orc War Boss. So to be honest, this Goblin Big Boss and this Orc War Boss, in conjunction with these archers, they're going to be able to slay these Reiksguard and do a very good job, because the Night Goblins will poison them, and then that'll make it a very easy fight for the Big Boss and the War Boss, both of whom have potions of toughness, so they'll be able to last forever. So my opponent uses a net of Amnitok to snare these guys. I'm not sure why, because again, they weren't going to get away from these cavalry, but regardless, maybe he just wanted to hold them in position, and he does use a missile attack on my big boss, which was not very effective. In the front line, my goblins are beginning to absorb the shock, of the missile fire, which is totally fine. I'm very happy with that. And my Doom Divers are shooting back at him, and my Doom Divers will absolutely outvalue him here. They're going to start flying into these swordsmen, and then the units behind them, and you can already see them taking serious damage, whereas my goblins with their shields are taking almost no damage. So definitely a very, very good investment for me. And keep in mind, these guys only cost 300, so it was definitely a great deal. Up here, I pull my auxiliary Goblin Wolf Riders to tie up these Reiksguard. Of course, they're going to get absolutely crushed by Reiksguard, but that keeps these guys from being over here, and, it worked out pretty well for me. And this War Boss, I did have to use the Potion of Toughness because he was taking serious damage right out of the gates, but now the Reiksguard are starting to lose their value, and the big boss and, my Night Goblins are starting to really, really damage and cut through them. So I was very happy about that. And so finally, we go ahead and engage in the front line. The goblins are going to just engage with the swordsmen. Granted, the swordsman will crush them, but it actually worked out quite well because he doesn't have any anti-large units, really. So this Arachnarok Spider just marches right through those guys. I used the Fists of Gork to give him some melee defense and melee attack, and he's going to crush those swordsmen, and it's definitely going to be brutal. Back here, I did get my Goblin Wolf Riders from the Vanguard Deployment back here and ran them through these crossbowmen, so that now they're just cycle charging through all his crossbowmen, and I cannot tell you guys, that's so much value for 300 something resources. I'm just disabling his entire crossbowman line and taking their fire, where, they could be targeting this Arachnarok Spider, and that's what needed to happen for him, so it worked out very well for me. And now that the goblins absorbed the initial shock, I send in the Black Orcs, who they already crushed and drove back this line with the spiders, so they'll be getting repathed over here to deal with this unit. It looks like he was thinking about running over to my Doom Divers, but decided to change his mind here once he saw the Black Orcs. Over here on the hill, things are, again, going quite well. These goblins are applying poison to these guys, and my big boss and Orc War Boss are just crushing these Reiksguard. It just goes to show, the potions just give you so much flexibility in terms of how to use those units. Like, if that had been Grimgor, for example, he probably could have gotten cheesed out, or, he would have at least taken some serious damage. So right now, this Black Orc line is holding pretty well, and the Doom Divers are continuing to generate massive value on his back line. My opponent does use a magic missile effect here in the back of my troops, which is pretty good, but I return the favor, and he is now shaken, so I was pretty happy about that. Over here, this Arachnarok Spider is engaged with these Greatswords, which is a really, really good matchup for me. They don't have any anti-large capabilities. They are armor-piercing, but regardless, this Spider is going to be very, very comfortable here, and these poor Greatswords are definitely going to have a bad time against this guy. And he's got his little goblins up here doing their thing, so it was going very well. Right here, these Black Orcs were able to push through to the back line and get his crossbowmen. He probably should have brought these guys over to help him, but I think he was very keen on winning this engagement as my Orc Shaman was there, which is totally fine. And now you guys can see his crossbowmen have been completely chased off by those Doom Divers. So again, they're just such a good siege unit. Probably one of my favorite ones in the entire game. Although Cygors are very cool as well. They do bring a lot to the table. So now the Doom Diver catapults have changed, and they're going to be shooting these Greatswords in the back and doing quite well. So you guys can see their leadership is steady, but even with the rear flank from these goblins, it's going to take them down to shaken. And no matter how, low tier your unit is that's doing the rear charge, it will still have that rear charge morale hit. And, they're going to be retreating here soon. I mean, they're very low, and they're taking Doom Diver fire, and things are going quite well for me. Over here, these Black Orcs are continuing to fight, and Black Orcs are just such a tough unit. I mean, definitely one of the best that the Greenskins has to offer. And, they are slightly higher tier than Greatswords in my opinion, but regardless, my opponent is getting a nice rear charge here. And he also brings in Boris Todbringer, who is going to come in and, unfortunately rout these guys off most likely. So I do pull the Arachnarok Spider. I was able to kind of just dismantle this Greatsword unit. I mean, they're still fighting, but I figured this would be a better investment for the Spiders. And just kind of let these lingering Greatswords run around a little bit was fine. So the War Boss, they finally actually cleaned up all the Reiksguard. I did take some Goblin losses, but you can see the big boss is in good health, and all I had to use was a potion of health for both of those. So his Light Wizard is flying around and is continuing to, just harass wherever it can, and is now, I believe, using some sort of ability. No, it doesn't look like he was. But the fight's going pretty pitched here on the ground. This Arachnarok Spider is doing quite well against Greatswords. And this Orc War Boss, he still has a potion, and Boris here is using his Rune Fang, which gives him armor piercing and splash attack and other things. But regardless, the potion from my Orc War Boss is just so much more valuable than any of those type of augmentations. I do get a magic missile effect off with my Orc Shaman, and there goes his Light Wizard down in a blaze of glory and falling right in front of his troops. Definitely not good for the morale. So at that point, it was pretty much over. He had some scattered Greatswords, but I still had the Arachnarok Spider, the War Boss, a full group of Black Orcs over here. I had some Night Goblin archers continuing to fire, as well as 2 operational Doomdiver catapults. So at that point, it was pretty much over. So as far as the army goes, as you guys saw, the Goblins did an outstanding job of absorbing that crossbow fire. And then that kind of gave me time to get those rear flanking Goblin Wolf Riders. And look at that, 74 kills. That is so valuable for 300-something resources. So again, a huge fan of the Vanguard deployment, especially on wooded maps like this. Spider did quite well, getting into the Greatsword ranks. Doomdivers, again, you guys saw how good they are against enemy missile units. So very, very good value out of those. And the Black Orcs, of course, with the support of the Orc Shaman, the Ere We Go, and all those type of augmentations, were able to really cut through his greatswords and his swordsmen. And of course, I cannot say enough about the War Boss and the Big Boss. The Boss Squad definitely did very, very good at taking out these Reiksguard, because if you look at his army, most of it is fairly low tier, but he invested a lot in these Reiksguard. They're like 1,200 apiece, and to have them just get shut down by this Big Boss, and I lost a few Goblins, not even that many, and they were in pretty good health when they finished the fight, so that was definitely probably one of the turning points for me. So good game to Matthew. Look forward to seeing you again on ladder. It was definitely one of the more fun matchups I've had in the past few weeks. And thanks for watching, guys. Really appreciate the support. More content coming soon. Take care.